Take, for example, Champaign, Illinois. Yes, there really is a place called Champaign, Illinois, not too far from Normal. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Lost in the Boxes with me, Lawrence Brown. I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, not boxes, and one of those memos pertains to renting. At the moment, renting is taking up a lot of space in my brain, ironically rent-free, and that's because I've just moved. That's why I'm surrounded by the boxes. And so because it's on my mind at the moment, I thought this would be a terrific opportunity to talk about some of the cost differences between renting in Britain and America. It's not easy to do a cost differential between the two countries because both countries have many different towns and cities where rent is different across the board. And then I thought, if I'm going to do a video on this, I'm going to have to put in the effort, which is not easy when you can't feel your arms anymore. I figured it'd be particularly useful for people from Britain who are looking to move to America or vice versa, to look at the cost differential between different towns and cities, and then you can make up your own mind where you want to live. Plot twist though, I don't just want to look at the average rent by location because that can be misleading. I'm also going to take into account each city's average salary, which sounds like celery, but the only other thing that it's got in common is that it's synonymous with the colour green. That was a joke about money and vegetables. And so without further ado, let's take a look at my home country of England. It won't surprise you to learn that the capital city of England is London. I know I'm full of obscure facts, but it also won't surprise you to learn that London has the highest rent in the land. On average, and of course this takes in both ends of the spectrum from cheap to expensive, the average monthly rent in London is equal to about $2,000. And that sounds like a lot to me, but then you have to consider that London is a major city. The good thing about that is that salaries are always going to be higher. The problem is London boasts something else higher than anywhere else in the land, and that is rent as a percentage of your earnings. According to the Office for National Statistics, about 41% of Londoners' earnings go toward their rent. This is fairly typical with major cities, including in the United States. If we take a look at this map, green represents a low percentage of your salary that goes toward rent, and red represents a high percentage. So right away you can tell that a lot of the red represents the major cities. Take, for example, New York City. In New York City, on average, 40% of your salary goes toward rent. It's even higher on the West Coast. Let's go to San Francisco, just not with such a high-pitched voice. San Francisco is the most expensive place in the land, especially when we're talking about rent. And on average, 43% of your salary will go toward rent. I don't want to leave out the South, so Miami, 42%, and I do not want to leave out Hilton Head Island, because I know you are asking, 42% there also. So that's kind of in line with London, right? If you're thinking of leaving England and moving to the United States, and you're okay, like you've got money to burn, firstly, don't burn it. You want to keep as much of it as you can. But if you want to live in a major city like that, then by all means do. I will give a bit of a shout out from a monetary standpoint to Chicago, which is still a major city, right? It's the third largest in the United States. But look at that. 34%. Still high. That is still high. But if you are a major city type person, I would recommend there. And there are some other big cities in the United States where it gets lower even than that. Take, for example, some of the more famous cities in Texas. I mean, look at this. Lots of yellow dots in Texas, and that's not just cowboy hats. These indicate a sort of mid-range percentage. 28% in Austin, 30% in Dallas, and 27% in College Station, Texas. Never heard of it. So in the case of Chicago and in the case of Texas, if you're okay with extreme weather, then those are the places to be. Now, one of the things I like to take into account on this channel is that major cities aren't for everybody, right? So what about those in-between towns and cities? And this is where I really started to notice a huge difference between England and America. When it comes to bang for your buck or biff for your quid, your best bet is outside of London. But where specifically? In the regions around London, like the East and South East, you'll still see a fairly high percentage of your salary go toward rent. It's just not quite as high as London. In fact, you're looking at numbers that are comparable to Chicago, about 34%. There are some very beautiful and historic places in the South East and East, so you've got Canterbury and Ipswich. If you fancy living in places like that, fine. Just consider that you'll get better bang for your buck up north. In fact, the 3 regions with the lowest percentage of salary going toward rent are all in the north. You've got the northwest as well as Yorkshire that are hovering around about the 24% mark. The lowest percentage in the country is to be found in the chilly northeast. And to put that into context for Americans, that's where Newcastle Brown Ale comes from and where Sting was born. The singer, not the wrestler. In the northeast of England, only about 23% of your salary goes toward your rent. That's a number that I know well, because when it comes to the United States, I haven't always lived in Chicago. Before then, I lived in Indianapolis, which boasts the same percentage as the northeast of England. But the difference here is, unlike the northeast of England, Indianapolis is not the place where you get your best bang for buck in America. And that makes sense. Indianapolis is still a fairly large city. It's when you start looking at the places around it, even in the state of Indiana, but also my current state of Illinois, and the Midwest in general, where you'll start seeing some insanely low percentages and some really high-pitched voices. Take, for example, Champaign, Illinois. Yes, there really is a place called Champaign, Illinois, not too far from Normal. In Champaign, Illinois, which is a sentence I can't say without feeling drunk, only 16% of your salary goes toward your rent. So you're free to spend it on whatever you like. Fast food, a new television set, a train ticket to Chicago to come and say hi to me. Actually, don't do that. That'd be weird. But that's not the lowest in the country. In fact, it's not even the lowest in the state. Let's move on over to Bloomington. Again, not literally. Bloomington, Illinois, 13%. Unlucky for some, although I can't speak to the town itself. I've never been. If you live in Bloomington, Illinois, let me know if that's indicative in some way of the town itself, or if you're just really easygoing people that like to sort of, lower the price of rent but casually heighten your salaries. That's not really how economics work. So why am I showing you this? It's not to tell you move to Bloomington, Illinois. It's to tell you that there are more places in the United States than just the major cities, says the guy who lives in Chicago. But I used to live in the city of Fort Wayne, Indiana, and there the annual mean salary is about $43,000 and the monthly rent on average $520, which was more or less what we were paying when we were living in Fort Wayne. So if you have aspirations of moving to the United States, but you kind of want to do it on a budget, you want to be able to save more quickly while you're here, a good place to start, if it aligns with your career goals, could be somewhere like Fort Wayne or many other dark green places on this map. I've linked to this map in the description box below so that you can look at these cities in more detail. Again, your financial situation, your aspirations, they are going to differ from person to person. So I'm not dictating where you should move in the United States. I'm also purposely not touching on other criteria in this video such as safety, environment, or places with the highest percentage of love for British accents. When it comes to the other stuff, look it up yourself, decide what fits your personality, and go with your instinct and a little bit of planning. On the other hand, if you're looking to one day move to England and you've got your heart set on London, great, go for it. I once lived there myself, absolutely loved it, absolutely couldn't afford it. But do know that if you are looking for a lower cost of living, definitely look outside of London and particularly look to the north. And if I sound like I'm being biased toward the north just because I'm from there, facts are facts. That's it for this episode of Lost in the Pond. Let me know in the comments below where you live and how the cost of living is there, particularly as it pertains to rent versus salary. And if you'd like more of my words, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at LostInThePondUS, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that my videos don't get lost in the pond. And while we're on the subject of money, a big thank you to all of my patrons for all of your support. You are the lifeblood of this channel, and if you would like to become a patron of Lost in the Pond, you can do so at patreon.com/lostinthepond. Until next time, I'm going to go and find a way out of here.